The wind moved strangely that morning, carrying with it a whisper that did not belong to the valley of Arantha. For generations, the valley had been a peaceful cradle of sunlight, wheat fields, and soft blue rivers, but today the air felt heavier, as if woven with threads of unseen warnings. People still went about their chores, but they did so glancing over their shoulders, feeling something approaching, something they couldn't yet name. At the farthest end of the valley, where the morning fog lay thickest, stood a young man named Kale, his cloak whipping behind him as he stared toward the eastern hills. He had felt it before anyone else, a pull, a call, a quiet disturbance echoing in the air like a trembling note waiting to break. Kale didn't know whether it was danger or destiny, only that it was getting closer, and it demanded attention. He tightened his grip around the wooden staff his father had carved for him years ago. Though the staff was worn and the carvings faded, it was the only item he owned that made him feel connected to the world beyond the valley. His father had always insisted Kale was meant for more than simple village tasks. The world is wider than the walls we build around ourselves, he used to say before disappearing the night Kale turned 12. No one ever discovered what happened to him, and the village quickly grew silent whenever Kale asked. But today, something about that strange whispering wind reminded him of his father's voice, not the tone, but the calling, the sense of urgency behind it. Down the hill, the old bells of Arantha rang for the morning gathering, yet even their familiar chime felt different today, slightly off, as if the metal sensed the tension in the air. Kale took a slow breath and walked down the path, the soles of his boots crunching through the dew-covered grass. The valley was waking, smoke rising from chimneys, roosters crowing, merchants pulling open the shutters of their stalls, but beneath it all, Kale felt a thundering silence, like the calm before a story takes its sharpest turn. When he reached the village square, he noticed the elders gathered around the stone fountain. Their faces were unusually grave. Elder Miran, the oldest among them, clutched a parchment sealed with a silver crest none of them had ever seen before. Kale approached quietly, but Miran's eyes found him instantly. "You felt it, didn't you?" the elder whispered. Kale's heart stumbled. "Felt? What?" "The disturbance," Miran said, lowering his voice so the others wouldn't hear. "The shadows beyond the hills have begun to move again." Kale frowned. "Again? What do you mean again? I've never heard of such shadows." Miran hesitated, as if debating whether Kale was ready to hear the truth. "Your father knew. The valley is not as safe as the others believe. There are old forces waking, forces we prayed would never rise again." His breath caught in his throat. "What does my father have to do with any of this?" Before Miran could answer, a thunderous crack ripped across the sky. Villagers screamed as the clouds above twisted into a spiral of dark smoke. Birds scattered in frantic patterns. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Kale stumbled forward, clutching the edge of the fountain for balance as a sharp, icy wind blasted through the square, extinguishing every lantern at once. And then, through the swirling shadow overhead, a symbol appeared, not drawn, not written, but burned into the sky like a warning brand. It was the same crest that sealed the parchment in Miran's hand. The sky roared again, and with a shudder, the symbol dissolved, raining down tiny sparks of silver dust that vanished before touching the ground. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Elder Miran turned to the crowd and raised his voice. "Everyone inside, now, lock your doors and do not step out until the second bell rings." The villagers obeyed with frantic urgency, scattering in every direction. But Kale remained frozen, staring at the sky that had so suddenly transformed into a message meant for someone, perhaps meant for him. Miran placed a trembling hand on Kale's shoulder. "Your journey begins sooner than I hoped." "What journey?" Kale demanded. "What is happening? What did that symbol mean? What does any of this have to do with my father?" Miran's expression broke into something between sorrow and determination. He pressed the sealed parchment into Kale's hands. "This letter was meant for the day the shadows returned. It is from your father." And Kale, he knew this day would come. Kale felt the world tilt beneath him. "My father." "Yes," Miran said, voice shaking. "And whatever he wrote in that letter, it will change everything you think you know about yourself, about this valley, and about the darkness rising beyond the hills." Kale looked down at the parchment, heart racing, fingers trembling around the seal he had never expected to see. The crest shimmered faintly, reacting to his touch as though recognizing him. He swallowed hard. "What do I do now?" he whispered. Miran's gaze hardened. "You open it, and then you choose, because the shadows will not wait." Kale slowly broke the seal, and the wind rose again. Parchment trembled slightly in Kale's hands, though whether from the wind or his racing pulse he couldn't tell. The seal, a shimmering silver crest shaped like an eye encircled by flame, pulsed faintly as if awakened from a long sleep. He took a slow breath and unfolded the letter. For a moment, the ink appeared dull and faded, then, as his fingertips brushed across the page, the words ignited softly with orange light, glowing as though written in fire. My son, if you are reading this, then the shadows have begun their return, and your path can no longer remain hidden. You must listen carefully, for every truth I have kept from you was not to protect you from danger, but to prepare you for it. Cale's breath hitched. He could almost hear his father's voice behind the words, carrying that familiar mixture of calm wisdom and unspoken fear. There is a force in this world older than kingdoms, older than the Valley of Arantha, older even than the shadows themselves. It is a bond carried through bloodlines. Our bloodline, yours. Cale lowered the letter slightly, his heart hammering. My bloodline. Mirren stepped closer, watching him with quiet intensity. Keep reading, the elder urged, his voice trembling. Cale nodded and continued, you are not just a child of Arantha. You are a warden of the flame, the last one. It is a power that burns within you, a power that can both protect and destroy, depending on the strength of your spirit. And the shadows returning to this land, they are seeking you, Cale. They always have. He felt the air around him tighten, as if even the world leaned closer to listen. I was meant to train you. I was meant to stay. But when I discovered the darkness stirring beyond the hills, I had no choice but to leave before it reached the valley. I followed it into the Wraithlands, where even I was not certain I would survive. Cale's fingers shook. Memories of his father's sudden disappearance hit him like a wave, the unanswered questions, the village whispers, the empty chair at the fire each night. Mirren finally spoke. Your father was not an ordinary man. Some of us knew, but the truth was too dangerous to share before its time. Cale read on. If the shadows have returned, then they will soon seek the Emberstone, the source of your power, the heart of the Wardens. You must find it before they do. And you must not face the journey alone. Seek the seer of Astron. She will guide you where I no longer can. Cale exhaled shakily. The letter was nearly finished, but the last lines glowed brightest of all. And remember, my son, fear is a flame. If you feed it, it will consume you. If you face it, it will light your path. I believe in you, more than you know. Orion, your father. The glow faded. The air fell silent. Cale stared at the parchment for a long moment before whispering, a warden. Me. The words felt too large, too heavy, too impossible, yet something inside him stirred, a warmth flickering in his chest like an ember awakening after years of sleep. Mirren nodded slowly. I feared this day would come sooner than you were ready. But destiny is rarely patient. Cale swallowed hard. The seer of Astron, where is she? Mirren's expression dimmed, far beyond the shadow hills. Through the forests of Nalvar. Across the broken bridges of the Old Kingdom. It is a path even seasoned travelers fear to take. Cale folded the letter carefully. But I have to go. Mirren placed a hand on his shoulder. Then you must prepare yourself. You will need supplies, and allies. Cale looked up sharply. Allies? Who would help me? A new voice answered from behind. I would. Cale spun around to find Lyra, the blacksmith's daughter, standing at the edge of the square. Her braided dark hair was dusted with soot, her leather apron still tied around her waist. But her eyes, fierce, determined, stubborn, were what held Cale's attention. I heard everything, she said, stepping closer. You're not going alone. Someone has to make sure you don't trip 5 minutes into the forest. Cale's mouth opened slightly. Lyra, this isn't just a trip into the woods. This is, I know exactly what it is. She crossed her arms. And I'm coming. Mirren sighed but didn't object. You will need her strength, and her courage. Before Cale could respond, the ground trembled suddenly, a deep, rumbling quake that made the fountain ripple. A cold wind swept through the village, darker than the last, carrying with it whispers that sounded almost human. The shadows across the hills thinned, and began to move. Mirren paled. They're coming sooner than expected. Cale gripped his staff. The ember-like warmth in his chest flared, pulsing in sync with the approaching darkness. Lyra drew a dagger from her belt. Then we leave now. Cale nodded, fear swirling within him, but something stronger rising to meet it. A spark, a beginning, a path he couldn't turn away from. As the sky darkened and the shadows crept closer to the valley's edge, Cale whispered a silent promise to his father. I will find the Emberstone. I will find the seer. And I will not let the darkness claim this world. Then he and Lyra stepped toward the hills, toward destiny, danger, and a truth far greater than either of them could imagine.